Number 10. Train tracks. In January 2022, 40-year-old Michelle Alyssa Go was waiting on the southbound platform when she was shoved onto the train tracks and hit by an oncoming train. The incident was supposedly unprovoked, and the victim appeared to have had no interaction with the culprit. The suspect had even previously approached another woman who had become alarmed when she saw him and moved away. The woman had gotten the impression that he was about to physically push her onto the tracks, but didn't. However, as she walked away, she witnessed the man pushing his other victim. EMS officials who responded to the scene found the victim, later identified as Michelle Alyssa Go, with severe trauma to her body, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. Go lived in the Upper West Side of Manhattan and worked for the consulting giant Deloitte. The suspect, 61-year-old Simon Marshall, was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. According to the authorities, Marshall has no known address. Marshall, who was wearing a black hooded jacket and has a gray beard, stuck his tongue out at photographers as he was led into the Midtown South precinct on West 35th Street. He came off as completely insane and talking gibberish during interrogation and yelled profanities at reporters when he was being escorted out. He also confessed to killing Go, citing his claim to be God as the reason for the murder, along with Go stealing his jacket. Marshall has a criminal record that dates back to 1998 when he was arrested for robbery, with the most recent arrest in October 2019 for criminal possession of a controlled substance. He served 2 years in state prison then for attempted robbery and was released in August 2021. According to Mr. Simon's sister, he had been suffering from schizophrenia for over 20 years and that she had once begged a hospital not to release him because she knew he would stop taking his medication. Number 9. Crowbar assault. On May 13, 2014, 18-year-old Maria Garate walked into the San Jose Walmart shortly before 11 a.m. and bashed a young girl in the head with a crowbar. The girl's father intervened and was also attacked in retaliation. Thankfully, the young girl's injuries were not life-threatening, but Garate has been charged with assault with a deadly weapon. On security footage, she was seen walking into Walmart with a crowbar and approaching a father and daughter browsing the purse section. She then assaulted the 4-year-old girl and her father, who had intervened to protect her during the frenzied attack, which resulted in serious injuries. Employees eventually managed to restrain the teen until police arrived. Garate writhed around on the ground during this, screaming that the 4-year-old victim deserved it. Police have not determined the motive for the attack, nor have they stated whether Garate knows her victims, who were taken to a nearby hospital and released after being treated for their injuries. She's no stranger to law enforcement, but her previous record was kept private by the authorities. It was also not made clear whether drugs were involved. Garate is currently being held in the Santa Clara County Jail. Number 8. Chinatown. On February 13, 2022, a 35-year-old woman was stabbed to death by a homeless man who followed her inside her Chinatown apartment. The situation unfolded as Christina Yuna Lee was dropped off at her apartment on the 100 block of Christie Street early morning after returning home from a Saturday night out. Ahmad Nash was said to have followed her up 6 flights of stairs to her apartment. Surveillance video was discovered showing Lee opening her apartment door and Nash allegedly forcing his way inside. Lee began screaming, prompting her neighbors to call 911. When officers from the NYPD arrived, the door was barred and had to be broken down. Lee's body was discovered in her toilet with multiple stab wounds, while Nash was covered in blood. He was arrested and charged with murder and burglary. There's also no supposed past relationship between Lee and the suspect. However, Nash does have a criminal history that includes 5 felonies and 3 pending court proceedings arising from numerous alleged acts. He is claimed to be homeless, having lately resided at a homeless shelter on the Bowery. Number 7. Transitional housing. 31-year-old Juantez Jamel Talos, who lives in transitional housing, was charged on May 4, 2022 with the vicious attack caught on surveillance footage in Seattle's Belltown neighborhood. The video shows the assailant dropping 2 bags he was holding in order to grip a bat with both hands and attack the woman from behind as she walked alone on January 31st. He was seen taking a full-body swing at the woman's head and then picked up his belongings and fled the scene. Cops discovered the Amazon employee on her back with blood pouring from her right ear. She had suffered skull fractures, a possible concussion, and required major surgery as a result of the assault. She explained to investigators that she was hit from behind and didn't see her attacker coming. Talos himself just walked around with the bat in his hand after the attack and went in to get a slice of pizza before returning to his apartment. He lives at a transitional housing facility in Seattle's Belltown neighborhood, just 500 feet or a little over 150 meters from where the woman was attacked. Due to his distinctive facial tattoos, investigators were able to track him down. An officer discovered him in the lobby of the transitional living facility, but he returned to his apartment as the cop called for backup. Officers also discovered the clothes Toulouse was wearing in the video clip in an oven. The baseball bat, however, was not found. Toulouse was imprisoned at the Kings County Correctional Facility on $150,000 bail on May 9, 2022. It's unclear whether he hired an attorney to represent him, but if convicted of first-degree assault, Toulouse faces up to 12 years in prison. He has a lengthy criminal sheet, including 2 domestic violence convictions in 2013 and first-degree robbery conviction in 2009. Number 6, Menace in the Park. 33-year-old Austin Stovall was arrested on May 11, 2022 in connection with the shocking attack at Swift Cantrell Park in Kennesaw on May 8, 2022. The attack was the first incident like this in the 130-acre park outside Atlanta, which has playgrounds, trails, and picnic pavilions. The suspect in question was identified and apprehended by the authorities and will now face charges as a result of his actions. Stovall, who is listed as homeless in Cobb County Jail records, has been charged with sexual assault, aggravated sexual battery, kidnapping, and false imprisonment. He is also said to call a girl under the age of 16 over to his car and threatened to hurt her if she didn't follow him to a men's restroom in the park. Stovall then allegedly forced the girl into a corner inside the facility and sexually assaulted her. The victim's exact age was not disclosed. Stovall has a lengthy criminal record that includes numerous convictions and prison terms. According to the Journal-Constitution, he was most recently arrested in Cherokee County in July 2021 and charged with DUI, obstruction, and other offenses. He is being held without bond and is yet to hire a lawyer who could represent him on his behalf. Do you think people like this should ever be let back on the streets? Let us know in the comments below and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 5, Random Attack. In November 2021, 32-year-old Liza Casserly was stabbed to death by an enraged homeless man. Casserly and her 36-year-old male friend were walking home from a birthday party in Brooklyn when the vicious assault occurred. The man she was with was stabbed in the back as he tried to help her. Casserly was pronounced dead at Kings County Hospital after being rushed from the crime scene. Her companion, who was not identified, was in stable condition. The deranged man ran away from the scene. Despite the fact the police recovered his bloodied knife, he is yet to be identified or apprehended. The NYPD has notified that there are no new leads on the killer's identity. Casserly, a pharmacy technician, is survived by 2 children, 14-year-old Isaiah and 11-year-old Imani. Miagna Rios, who raised Casserly since she was 6 years old, says the slain woman's daughter is trying to work through her feelings, and her son is very distraught because he was very close to his mother. Rios also stated that the assailants should turn themselves in for the sake of the children. Number 4. Who's going to save your soul? On April 26, 2022, a 37-year-old man pled guilty to the murder of his 97-year-old grandmother in June of 2021. However, he was found not legally liable due to his mental illness. Deputies conducted a welfare check on an individual residing on the 11,000 block of West Mineral Point Road on June 14, 2021 at 5:30 a.m. and discovered a deceased elderly woman, Kathleen Beggs, in the garage. She was found with a plastic bag over her head surrounded by a pool of blood. Strangulation and severe blunt force injury to the neck were ruled to be the cause of death. Deputies also discovered the victim's grandson, Jamie Beggs, holding his head in both hands and stating that his mind is filled with devils and that he couldn't take it anymore. Beggs told police that his grandmother is a saint for sure now, as he had made her achieve her sainthood while claiming to have saved her soul. Beggs was taken into custody and placed into the Rock County Jail. He was reportedly homeless and living with his grandmother when he stabbed and strangled her. Beggs pleaded guilty to first-degree intentional homicide, but was found not legally accountable in a plea agreement due to the fact that he had bipolar schizoaffective illness. He can be held under the Department of Health Services jurisdiction for life due to his mental disorder, however. He will most likely be ordered to remain in an institution and will have to demonstrate that he is no longer a danger to himself, others, or property in order to be released. The Department of Health Services has set a hearing to decide the length of his commitment. Number 3, Armed and Dangerous. On January 13, 2022, a 31-year-old man was held in connection with the stabbing and subsequent death of Brianna Cooper, a 24-year-old design consultant for a luxury furniture business. Wilshire police officers had responded to Croft House on the 300 block of North La Brea Avenue at approximately 1:50 p.m. Officers reportedly talked with a customer who discovered Cooper dead on the floor. Authorities reported that Cooper was working alone at the business when the suspect went inside. Cooper allegedly texted a friend at 1:36 p.m. to warn her that there was someone in the store who gave her a bad vibe. Tragically, Cooper's deceased body was discovered shortly after by the customer who alerted the authorities. Surveillance video shows a man in a mask, believed to be homeless, coming inside the store and stabbing her to death. It then showed him moving casually out the back door of the store and down an alleyway. Police identified Sean Smith as a suspect a few days later, warning the public that he should be considered armed and dangerous. The attack was supposedly arbitrary and unmotivated. After issuing a warning with a reward for information leading to the arrest of the killer, a few days passed before officials were notified about a man matching Smith's description in Pasadena, and responded to the spot and captured Smith. Smith has a lengthy criminal history, including a minor arrest in 2020 and a 2016 arrest in South Carolina for resisting and assaulting a police officer. Smith was also wanted in North Carolina for assault with a deadly weapon. Number 2. Sociopathic personality. Conti was arrested in March 2020 and charged with sexual exploitation of a minor, involuntary servitude of a minor, distribution of a controlled substance to a minor, possession of a weapon by a prior owner, and sexual slavery of an adult. Conti would entice vulnerable underage boys who were homeless to work for his construction business, then provide them narcotics and commercially sexually exploit them. On October 25, 2021, he pleaded guilty to illicit sexual contact and distribution of a prohibited substance to a minor. During the sentencing, some victims read impact statements about their ordeals. One reader read aloud on behalf of a victim and stated that during his time with Stephen, he honestly believed that he would die soon since everyone Stephen surrounded him with made him feel frightened. He also kept him high on drugs because he knew he could take advantage of him and easily control him if he was under the influence. According to another statement, Conti also dragged a victim to a field and held a gun to his head. The victim stated that he would prefer 3 life sentences for the 3 lives he ruined. He says that he realizes it's not possible, but that Conti deserves it. Conti was diagnosed with sociopathic personality in the trial. The judge added in his concluding verdict that Conti had these people trapped in his web, left a trail of destruction for these individuals to follow in their lives, and the only thing he could do now is make Conti pay with years of his life, which, the judge stated, would still not be enough to cover the void left by these victims. He reiterated that Conti's example would be a lesson to the public that if someone does this ever again, there will be serious consequences. Conti was sentenced to 20 years in jail. Number 1. Another train track victim. A 41-year-old homeless guy was detained in April 22 after allegedly pushing a woman into an oncoming train. Officers rushed to the railroad tracks at Madison Street at approximately 6:35 a.m. on April 11th to a report of a lady being struck by an oncoming train. The female victim was immediately pronounced dead at the scene. Kevin Errol Lewis was apprehended nearby, and according to witnesses, Lewis pushed the woman into the path of the train. Lewis and the woman supposedly got into a verbal disagreement that turned physical, and during the fight, Lewis shoved her into the moving train, killing her. The victim's identification has yet to be determined. Lewis is said to have been placed into the Robert Presley Detention Center and charged with murder, domestic abuse, and many outstanding warrants for larceny and narcotics offenses. He is still being held without bail. Both the victim and the suspect are homeless. Number 10. The murder of Christina Una Lee. On Sunday morning in February 2022, Christina Una Lee was brutally stabbed to death in her apartment. She bled out in the bathtub of her own home after a homeless man broke into a New York City apartment and attacked her with a knife. The 35-year-old woman never saw it coming. Chilling surveillance footage obtained by the Post shows the killer following Lee from the moment she returned home. As she made her way up 6 flights of stairs to her apartment, he stalked close behind and forced his way into the apartment just before she could close the door. The suspect is 25-year-old Asamad Nash, a homeless man who had been a career criminal from a very early age. According to court records, he already had a history of crime going back to 2012, including multiple robberies and violence. He punched an elderly man in the face and stole his Metro card and was actually on supervised release when he broke into Lee's home at 4 o'clock in the morning. According to a criminal complaint and police sources, 5 days before he murdered Lee, he had been caught damaging Metro card machines in Manhattan subway stations, then ran away from officers trying to arrest him. And even after being hit with 27 counts of criminal mischief, he was allowed free to follow a woman to her home and kill her. Number 9. Christmas on Fire. During the Christmas season of 2021, a homeless man was busted in New York City setting the Fox News Christmas tree on fire. The vagrant did the unthinkable outside the extremely busy Rockefeller Center in Manhattan in front of dozens of tourists and patrolling officers. The suspect is 49-year-old Craig Tamahana. Somehow he slipped past security and pushed his way inside of the artificial tree. He then used its internal metal frame to scale up to the top of the holiday structure and lit some cardboard on fire while he was still inside. As he was trying to leave the scene, Craig was tackled to the ground by a security officer who watched him sneak out of the now smoking tree. Unfortunately, it was too late to stop the flames. The tree was beyond any kind of saving. Apparently, Craig had been planning the attack on the Christmas tree for a while. According to his father, Richard, he believes his son had probably burned the Christmas tree because he was hungry for attention. Richard called Craig a destructive nutcase and claimed Craig had a drug problem. He also admitted he's never been able to control him. Craig, who was unofficially called the Grinch of New York City, ended up causing about $500,000 in damage. Number 8. Homeless Hunter. Recently, in March of 2022, police offered a $10,000 reward for any information that could lead to the arrest of a vicious man who started hunting homeless people in the streets of Manhattan. On March 12th at about 5 o'clock in the morning, the unidentified man, dressed all in black, approached a homeless man sleeping on the side of the street in Soho and shot him in the arm. Thankfully, the victim was taken to the hospital where he made a full recovery. Less than an hour after that, the man found another victim snoozing peacefully in a sleeping bag near Lafayette Street. This time, though, the man with the gun shot the vagrant twice, once in the head and then in the neck, killing him almost instantly. He then took off and no one has any idea who he might be. The second incident was actually caught on camera, but unfortunately there's nothing to identify the man except a tiny slit in his ski mask where you can see a part of his white forehead and nose. And because his motive is unclear, without any physical evidence, police don't really have any way to figure out his identity. Number 7. New York City Squirrel Man. A homeless man in New York City recently decided he was going to live in a tree in Riverbank State Park. He has since been dubbed the Squirrel Man because he quite literally resided in a tree. But in March of 2022, the Squirrel Man was evicted from that tree, and he did not handle it well. He beat a photographer with a garbage bag full of clothes and even attacked a reporter with a New York Post using a branch. And he did this all right in front of officers from the NYPD. Police and city park officials arrived to kick the vagrant out of his treehouse. They actually brought chainsaws with the intention of cutting the whole tree down if the Squirrel Man refused to cooperate. The tree dweller was identified as 44-year-old Ruel Altanaga. He was so upset to be evicted from his treehouse that he shimmied down the trunk, attacked the reporter with a branch, and then took off. But obviously he didn't get far. The police arrested him, and he was charged with assault and criminal mischief. Do you think the police should let homeless people live in trees? Tell us in the comments and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 6. Wrong place to bathe. In the summer of 2017, an alligator attacked a homeless man as he was bathing in a Florida pond. The gator made off with the vagrant's left index finger, 2 toes, and a testicle. The homeless man was identified as 68-year-old Frederick Amon. After being bit several times, Frederick managed to escape the gator's jaws and stumble his way to a nearby surgery center when a worker called police. Frederick told WZVN that he had been taking his usual Monday morning bath at a retention pond in Port Charlotte, about 100 miles or just over 160 kilometers south of Tampa, when the attack unfolded. He said, quote, "You're having a nice day one minute and the next minute you're a bloody mess." He said at first he didn't really feel any pain, and it wasn't until later on that he realized the extent of his injuries. Frederick, who has been homeless for over 20 years, said he's been bathing in local ponds for the last decade, and he doesn't plan to stop now. Florida Fish and Wildlife officials said the alligator was later removed from the pond and was euthanized. Number 5. Killer Ninja. In November 2017, a homeless man wielding a samurai sword with some kind of ninja star tattooed on the center of his forehead stabbed a fellow homeless man to death. The man with the samurai sword is 51-year-old George Christopher Livingston, and he's been charged with second-degree murder in the state of California. The police received a 911 call on a Saturday afternoon that someone was discovered lying by the railroad tracks covered in blood. The body was about 10 miles or just about 16 kilometers from West Palm Beach. Officers found the homeless victim badly sliced and a 3-foot or 1 meter long samurai sword lying on the ground nearby. One of the witnesses was George Livingston, who after being questioned admitted he was the one that did it. According to what George said, he and his victim, David Beckett, had an argument. The argument led to an altercation on the edge of a homeless encampment beside the railroad tracks where George stabbed David with a samurai sword. No one knows where he got the weapon or why he resorted to slashing his friend, but David did not recover, and George is now looking at life in prison. George was already a felon with a lengthy list of past arrests, including at least one count of aggravated stalking. He wasn't allowed to be carrying a weapon at the time of the murder, not even a sword. Number 4, horse killer in Sacramento. At the beginning of 2022 in Sacramento County, a homeless man viciously bashed a horse in the face with a hammer and killed 15 chickens in their coop. According to the owner of the house, she normally wakes up super early in the morning to feed her animals, but that morning her intuition told her to stay inside. She didn't go out to the stalls until 9 o'clock in the morning, and that was when she saw a homeless man standing in front of her horse's stall with a hammer. She hollered at him to go away, and he just kind of wandered off like he had no idea where he was. When she could no longer see him, she rushed to check on her animals, and that's when she discovered the carnage. The vagrant had beat the poor horse with his hammer. Causing massive, ugly bruising all over the animal's body, and the horse's head had a nasty wound as well. Fortunately, a veterinarian was called in and the horse was properly taken care of, but not without feeling extreme pain and misery. The chicken coop was a bloody scene. The homeless man had gone nuts and literally ripped the chickens apart like some kind of rabid chupacabra. And to make things worse, the cops were already aware of this man and let him walk around even though they knew he could be dangerous. When they showed up, all they said was that he, quote, wasn't supposed to be in that particular area. Number 3, teen chooses life of crime. A freshman dance student was discovered dead in a creek not far from the University of Texas campus. The victim was 18-year-old Haruka Weiser, and she was brutally killed by Mikael Kreiner, a homeless teenager only 17 years old. According to Austin police, Mikael was discovered with a duffel bag that belonged to Haruka. Mikael and Haruka met on April 3, 2016. Haruka was staring down at her phone as she walked in the direction of the Alumni Center. Surveillance footage shows Mikael creepily watching Haruka, then calmly getting off his bike and following closely behind the woman. He's seen pulling something out of his pocket and following Haruka across a bridge outside the view of security cameras. The cameras wouldn't see him again until almost 2 hours later, now with a slight limp and a small duffel bag on his shoulder. Mikael Kreiner's story is sad, but definitely not an excuse for murder. His grandmother kicked him out of her home 300 miles or just shy of 500 kilometers away and told him a boy his age needed to make it on his own in the world. So he went to Austin. He didn't have any money and decided not to get a job and became homeless. He turned to crime and decided Haruka was an easy target. He assaulted her, murdered her, and stole what little she had in her possession at the time. In 2018, Mikael Kreiner was given life in prison, and he won't be eligible for parole for 40 years. Number 2, serial squatter. 3 women who were targeted by a homeless serial squatter recently spoke up about their horrifying experiences. This serial squatter's name was Jameson Bachman, and he had been terrorizing people for years before murdering his own brother in a psychotic fit of rage. Jameson was from Pennsylvania, and he came up with the scheme of, quote, renting a room in a person's house and then turning their lives into a living nightmare. He would use a fake name in Craigslist ads, tell people he was a lawyer, and then never paid any rent. He came off as clean, educated, and a decent person. But after a few short days of living together, he would begin to do all kinds of weird things, like clog their toilet with cat litter, steal their light bulbs, and start arguments about nothing for no reason. One of his first victims was Arlene Hairbaden, whom he moved in with in 2006. After refusing to pay rent, he strangled Arlene. Then he went to police to file a report claiming that she tried to stab him. This resulted in Arlene being kicked out of her own house by the cops. Then, while she was locked out, Jameson killed her 2 pet cats. He went on to ruin a lot more people's lives. One of the last victims was Alex Miller, whom he lived with in 2017. He beat her so badly that he was arrested and sent to jail. When his brother Harry bailed him out and allowed Jameson to stay at his home, Jameson killed him. He tried to get away in his dead brother's car, but was surrounded by a SWAT team. Jameson died in prison on December 8, 2017 at the age of 60. Number 1, run over. In late April of 2022, a couple believed to be homeless together were killed on some New York City subway tracks. They were discovered at around 11 o'clock in the morning near the 145th Street One stop in Hamilton Heights. According to the NYPD, the woman's body was found inside the subway tunnel while her male companion had been horrendously dragged by the force of the train all the way to the nearby stop. The victims didn't have any identification with them, so authorities haven't been able to figure out who they are. It is believed that they were trying to make a living down in the subway tunnels, probably using the tunnels as a shelter when they were accidentally run over by the train. According to the chief of the MTA, Pat Warren, around 350 people are living inside 29 separate encampments that are all tucked away inside New York City's subway system. That's 29 tiny underground villages filled with homeless people. There are also about 89 people actually living inside the stations themselves.
Number 10. Jonathan Cole. November 10th, 2022, a young Los Angeles woman named Kylie Watts was walking in North Hollywood when a homeless man brutally attacked her. The 24-year-old was minding her own business as she passed 30-year-old Jonathan Cole, but he had more sinister intentions. While Kylie's back was turned to him, Cole jammed sharp gardening shears into the woman's skull. Instantly, the victim was horrified. In a state of shock, she ran to a restaurant near the scene. She begged employees and patrons to help her before falling to the ground. Emergency responders quickly came and rushed Kylie to a hospital where she was able to call her mom. Luckily, she survived the ordeal, but not without a brain injury. It will take a long time to fully recover, and Kylie says she'll probably have difficulty with vision and balance moving forward. Since the assault, Cole has been arrested. He's been charged with both assault with a deadly weapon and attempted murder. It's still unclear what the homeless man's motive was. Number 9. Moose. In August 2022, 41-year-old Jessica Krustic was taking her beloved dog Moose out for a walk in New York City's Prospect Park. It was around 6:30 in the morning when she saw a homeless man digging through a trash can. She said that she often sees the guy walking around the park, talking to himself and holding a big stick. Jessica tried pulling Moose to the side so they could walk right past the man and avoid confrontation, but sadly, that's not what happened. The unnamed vagrant saw the woman and her dog and started spraying the two of them with a bottle of liquid. Later on, Jessica discovered that it was actually urine. Then, the guy began mumbling some strange rant about immigrants and wildly waving a stick around. The pet owner tried running away, but it was no use. The suspect attacked Jessica and Moose by hitting her with the stick and smashing poor Moose's face. Luckily, a witness saw the assault and screamed at the homeless man to go away. 2 other bikers were in the area and helped as well after hearing the commotion. The homeless man was able to get away, and it's not clear if he was ever caught. Tragically, Moose passed away after receiving a perforated intestine from the incident. Jessica thought he was fine at first once they got him checked out at the vet, but after some time, he wasn't acting like himself. On a second inspection, the veterinarian discovered the real issue, which required surgery. Despite their attempts to save him, Moose didn't pull through. He was a good and brave boy until the end. Number 8. Terry Dunford. Sometimes, even when treated with the utmost kindness, people are just heartless and evil. For example, 40-year-old Terry Dunford from Colorado. After going through a difficult time, he found himself homeless. That's when he met 49-year-old Gina Leslie. She had recently moved to Denver all the way from San Antonio, Texas. She wanted to stay close to her children, who she split custody with. While looking for a more permanent teaching position, Gina was working in retail and for both Uber and Lyft, just trying to make a living. One of her children, Brittany, said that the woman was incredibly open and made friends with everyone. This is probably why the mother offered to let Terry stay with her temporarily. The decision was ultimately a bad one, since Terry betrayed Gina's kindness. Not only did she take in Terry, she also let another homeless man live in her apartment. On Valentine's Day 2018, Gina was discovered brutally stabbed to death. Her body had been there for a week before she was found. After failing to pick her children up, her ex-husband got worried. He called police to report her missing, and when they went to check her apartment, officers were met with a murder scene. They also found bloody men's clothing and a wallet belonging to Terry. Since then, he's been sentenced to 60 years in prison after pleading guilty to murder and assault. Terry will likely be in prison for the rest of his pitiful life. Number 7. Camp Hope. Spokane, Washington has a problem with their homeless population. While it's a harmful stereotype to label all homeless people as drug addicts, a large majority of them in this city are. Shelters don't accept people who won't abide by their rules, which include not using illegal substances while in their care. This results in many addicted individuals choosing to live on the street instead of getting the help they desperately need. With large groups of homeless people, they tend to stick together, forming small communities like Camp Hope. The homeless camp has a sour reputation in locals' eyes for being violent, dirty, and full of addicts. Recently on March 17, 2023, early one morning chaos broke out. Police officers were called to the scene and saw a tent bursting into flames while some propane tanks nearby also exploded. 2 people were inside the tent when the eruption happened. Each of them were taken to the hospital, with one needing treatment for severe burns. After a brief investigation from the fire department, it was determined that the explosion was an accident. The injured individuals were trying to fill up a propane tank and happened to be too close to their heater. Even with such a bad reputation, we can't help but be optimistic for the people at Camp Hope. Whether you live in a mansion or on the street, everyone is still a person capable of remarkable things. Not everyone is born with the same circumstances, so you should always remember not to judge others. Number 6. Terry Crumweed. When it starts getting towards the end of the year, no one likes to be stuck outside in the cold. For many homeless people though, there isn't another option. 31-year-old Terry Crumweed from Michigan was sentenced to 10 years in prison after his arrest in December 2022. The man was doing everything he could to stay warm, which included stealing. On the 13th of November that year, Terry broke into a garage and stole some clothes to bundle up with. Unfortunately, he also had meth on him when police took him into custody. Since this was his second offense, Terry's punishment was more severe. When the COVID-19 pandemic first started, he was let go from his job as a kitchen manager. This eventually led to him losing his home and being forced to live on the streets. With such difficult hardship, Terry couldn't cope and turned to drugs. His public defender, Terry Norris, says the homeless man is a good person who does well for himself, until his acquaintances come around with substances. Norris wanted Terry to be sent to a drug treatment program, but the court thought otherwise. Do you agree with the court's decision? Let us know in the comments down below. If you like the video so far, be sure to subscribe to the channel and join the Badger family. Number 5. Kendrick Hamlin. Political tension has been an ongoing issue in the United States, and it doesn't seem like it'll go away anytime soon. But then again, politics have never been easy. In February 2023, a Democratic representative from Minnesota was assaulted in her apartment building. While on an elevator, Representative Angie Craig was punched square in the chin by a 26-year-old homeless man named Kendrick Hamlin. Kendrick was apparently acting very strangely in the DC building's lobby. Once inside the lift with Craig, the man reportedly did a few push-ups, ramping himself up before the attack. After the first hit, he grabbed the woman's neck. Kendrick demanded that she let him inside her apartment. The representative might have gotten hurt even worse if she hadn't defended herself using some piping hot coffee. When news of the incident first broke, people were quick to say it was politically motivated, but police say otherwise. Kendrick has a lengthy history with law enforcement and criminal charges. He's since been indicted for the assault on the Congresswoman, and his next court date is set for April 5th. Number 4. Matthew Baxter. When you don't have a place to call your own, you have to get creative and resourceful. Many homeless people take advantage of public facilities, just like 34-year-old Matthew Baxter. But Matthew got a little too comfortable. In January 2023, the homeless man was arrested after touching himself sexually in the bathroom of a store in New York. While inside a family restroom, Matthew was doing something downright disgusting. Reports from law enforcement say that about 12 different people walked in on the man while he was getting down and dirty. Several of them knocked before entering, but Matthew didn't lock the door or say he was inside. Eventually, a poor employee at the store had to confront him. Even when the worker told him to stop and get out, he just kept going. Soon enough, officers came and arrested Matthew. They charged the homeless man with public lewdness, but it seems like he should be punished for scarring 12 people for life. It's unclear if Matthew received jail time, but if he did, his roommate is not going to be happy. Number 3. Katie Quackenbush. What do you do when you see a homeless person? Do you give them $1, offer them some food, or simply ignore them? Any of those options is much better than what a 32-year-old Tennessee woman did in 2017. While in Nashville's Music Row, Katie Quackenbush shot Gerald Melton, a homeless man, after he simply asked if she could move her Porsche. On August 26th, the 54-year-old was laying on the sidewalk, not bothering anyone at all, when Katie pulled up in her car spouting suffocating exhaust fumes. Melton had just woken up, so he might have been a bit grumpy when he asked the woman to move her vehicle. They got into an argument that quickly escalated once Katie threatened Melton, asking if he'd like to die tonight. In response to this sudden violence, the homeless man decided to walk away from the situation. At that point, the Porsche driver got out of her car, holding a gun. She shot Melton twice before jumping back in her vehicle and driving away. Reportedly, she and an unnamed passenger stopped by Taco Bell to grab some food before going all the way home. Obviously hurt, Melton received 3 surgeries for the gunshot wounds. He also reported the assault to police, which resulted in Katie being arrested on attempted murder charges. In court, her father, a Texas attorney, claimed that she made it clear to Melton that she had a weapon and would use it if necessary. Katie's defense argued that she fired in self-defense. The jury bought this story despite the defendant's history of violent threats. Once in a restaurant, she dumped a glass of water over a woman. Then another time, she said she'd use a brick to hit a baby. During her sentencing, Katie cried, saying that people online were harassing her. She received no jail time for shooting a homeless man. All she got was 11 months probation. Do you think Katie should have gone to prison? Number 2. Alexander J. A 40-year-old homeless man and repeat offender had charges pressed against him once again after assaulting a woman in March 2022. Alexander J. was captured on video throwing an innocent 62-year-old woman down the stairs at a light rail station in Seattle. Kim Hayes worked as a nurse and sustained 3 broken ribs as well as a fractured clavicle thanks to the attack. It doesn't seem like the crime was prompted by any particular reason. Alexander is simply a violent person. His arrest history is proof of that. With over 22 convictions on his record in both California and Washington, he's a known thief and serial abuser of both people and drugs. Kim has been selflessly serving in the medical field for over 25 years, just to be thanked with this attack. It's a miracle that she wasn't hurt worse after falling down the long concrete staircase considering her age. At first, when she stopped falling, Alexander came up and threw her again. He tried to do it a 3rd time, but Kim wasn't going down without a fight. She managed to buy some time before the homeless man had to run away since police were on the way. With a track record of violence, we aren't sure why Alexander was allowed on the streets to begin with. Hopefully this time, he'll stay locked up for good. Number 1. Garden hose. Dehumanizing homeless people sadly is a common practice carried out by many people. Labeling them as simply drug addicts or criminals is so harmful, but it helps many feel better about themselves and their own situations. It's a disgusting mindset to have, and a California man named Collier Gwynn is the epitome of it. In January 2023, a TikTok of the San Francisco Foster Gwynn Gallery owner circulated online. It featured him spraying a homeless woman on the street with a garden hose. When questioned about the gross behavior, Collier said he was just trying to get her to move away from his sidewalk. Instead of accepting that what he did was wrong, he tried blaming things on the neighborhood and lack of action by social services. He described the homeless woman as psychotic, claiming that multiple people have tried to help her and failed. Even if this was true, it doesn't justify what Collier did. He smugly stood with his legs crossed, leaning against a fence while hosing the woman down. It's simply inhuman, and there's no excuse for it. Internet users were quick to chime in on the situation, saying it's unconscionable and it's abuse. Thanks for watching. Have you ever had a strange encounter with a homeless person? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time on Bad Badger.